What did we learn?
FTX CEO John Ray really talking about how this is like a paperless bankruptcy, and that he doesn't trust a lot of the paper trail he sees. Meanwhile, on the lawmaker side, you have a recognition by some, such as Congressman French Hill, who says that the losses here could really dwarf what you saw even with Bernie Madoff. So one of the biggest bankruptcies here in American history. There's also this recognition of whether there could have been anything done to prevent something like this via regulation, via better rules of the land when it comes to what's happening in the United States when it comes to digital assets. But at the end of the day, you did have John Ray also saying this could have happened anywhere. Remember, you had charges, civil and criminal here, of fraud, and also the SEC saying that the commingling of funds here were happening as he was misleading investors about certain facts about FTX and Alameda.
Talk to us through, Sonali, really what the answer is for perhaps people who've lost money here. Was there any sort of explanation for those who have been so emotionally but also financially involved in this as to where the buck will potentially flow for US or for international users?
There's a few things here. You did have John Ray say that it's impossible to recoup everything. But you also had him say that in the United States it might be a little bit easier than other places given how the firm is structured. But I would also say that, remember, when you look at the SEC complaint, for example, they talk about how the funds were used and where the funds were used. Real estate purchases, political contributions, venture capital. Remember, we've already had the FTX executives say the venture capital in particular are assets. And how they treat that in the bankruptcy when they try to make customers whole again will be interesting, because they're going to have to track all these assets down at the end of the day. And will they get full dollar for them at the end? And are they even going to be able to find all the assets?
Meanwhile, I just want to go to your expertise here, Sonali, in the contagion effect. You've been looking a lot at the other exchanges, at Ed shone a light on some of the crypto-related names that have been sunk by this. But there has been a lot of reporting and focus on Binance, for example, on Twitter and on other areas of the media. Is that something that you think Washington is paying attention to at the moment?
I think they're pretty tied up with FTX at the moment. So that's a great question. If I asked anything about whether it's Binance or stablecoin industries or anything else, really, the focus really here is on FTX right now, because people have lost so much money and there is a lot of anger. But to the point that you're making there, Binance is a largely international exchange. Of course, there's also Binance US, but the issue you were talking about earlier in the show was net outflows to the tune of about $4 billion in a week. I thought Nansen's analysis of this was interesting, kind of not to fret. This is a small percentage of total assets, but it does go to show the customer fears around holding money in an exchange, especially as the industry gets more concentrated, plus that issue with stablecoin withdrawals to keep an eye on as the industry faces pressure, what happens to the stablecoin industry.
Whenever you have a congressional committee hearing like this, Sonali, yes, you get the testimony from those called as witnesses, but you also kind of get this broad range of opinion from those committee members that pose questions. Did we get any sense of what the committee members want to happen next? What happens next based on what was discussed in that room?
Well, one thing actually, and no shocker here, but when there's frustration in a committee, often it's backward looking. And so there were a lot of questions about what had happened, how this had happened. But there was also a fair bit of frustration that he was arrested yesterday before he was able to testify here today under oath to give Americans more clarity on what had happened here. I would say also, if you want that clarity, go to the indictment from the Southern District of New York, go to the SEC complaint and the CFTC complaint. There's a lot of detail in there, but there was certainly a lot of frustration here about not hearing from Sam Bankman-Fried himself under oath, which we know he had said he didn't have all the details because he didn't have all the data.